name is Matthew Barton, and I'm the host of the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. When it comes to the Food Network, appearing on one of their competition shows is invaluable for chefs and restaurants who could never afford to reach that size of an audience on their own. Appearing on national TV to show off your food, your techniques, your style, your personality, it's a huge feather in the cap for a lot of chefs. But it also translates into something bigger. This season of Firemasters featured not one, but two competitors from Regina, and it also happens that both of them are past guests on the podcast. Of course, I'm talking about Chef Milton Rebello and Pitmaster Rob Reinhardt. Rob has been plugged into Rebellion for years, doing his signature barbecue at our big events, Christmas, birthday, cask festivals, and just coming out week after week with his food truck. He's not even paying me to say it, how much I love his food. I'm just going to go out and say it. It's the best and I love it. And you should too. So let's get into it. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks for the warm words. My heart's glowing.
How's it going?
It's going great. It's a bit of a different summer than usual, but we're having fun. I'm kind of back to my roots, cooking and enjoying it a lot. Food truck's a big part of that, so we're cruising.
With the chance to kind of step back and slow down because the season's not as crazy, are you experimenting with new stuff? Are you adopting new techniques now?
Yeah, not so much new techniques, but new menu items. I did a test cook of some beef cheeks at home last week, so that's going to be a new taco on the food truck. And we're experimenting with some different flavors, all smoked food, of course. We introduced a Vietnamese banh mi sandwich on the truck as a special this year, and that was flying off the shelves. And I'm just having fun cooking again, getting back to my roots with charcoal and putting some of that stuff up for sale as well.
You've been doing it for a lot of years. I know the web store, to me at least, has been really invaluable. But what gets you excited about barbecue still?
What gets me excited about barbecue is even after 15 or 20 years of cooking this style of food, I'm still learning, I'm still experimenting, I'm still having fun testing different recipes or techniques and comparing the results, and more importantly, sharing that food, sharing those experiments with other people. That's why I do what I do. So
I saw you doing some stuff with pineapple. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've done some grilled pineapple salsa on some of the menu items we've had on our food truck. That's the biggest candidate, I guess.
It's nothing that I would ever think to do myself, but grilled pineapple really kind of just works.
Absolutely, and it doesn't take long. It's not difficult to do. You can do it on charcoal. You can do it on a gas grill. It takes a little bit of high heat, caramelize the sugars in that fruit, and it adds a tremendous amount of flavor.
Has COVID messed with your ability to get product? Have you had to think on the fly?
Yeah, earlier in the summer, once the two major beef plants in Alberta started having outages due to infections, the meat supply was disrupted pretty dramatically. I don't know, my price for fresh brisket tripled in the course of 2 weeks. That volatility is not easy to absorb when you're a business that tries to make a profit by selling generous portions of meat. But it seems to have settled down now. And I've been in this business a long time, so I actually tapped into the brisket that was sitting in Alberta for my Calgary Stampede needs and pulled some of that over to Saskatchewan. That kind of helped me get through the volatile period.
What are people most concerned about when they talk to you about barbecue, when they talk to you about what's going on this summer? What are you hearing?
I'm seeing a lot more people cooking at home, which thrills me endlessly. I've been running classes in Regina for over 10 years, teaching people all about this Southern style barbecue. And people are really enjoying it this year. People have more time at home, with vacations canceled and whatnot. Sometimes people have a little more disposable income and they're buying meat and they're cooking it. So there's a lot more questions coming across my desk, a lot more interest in barbecue classes and things like that. For someone that greatly enjoys sharing this culture, it excites me greatly just to see everybody cooking.
You said a lot of people are cooking at home, but for me, one of the big bonanzas has been discovering your web store, because we can just order some meat off the store, have it, and we could prep it in like 30 minutes.
Yeah, the vacuum sealed meat, it's something we've done at farmers markets, and we've done it on the side for several years. Once the pandemic hit and everybody was shut at home, we realized very quickly that our summer revenue source was evaporating. So we got more heavily into the vacuum sealed meats. We came in once a week, we did a heavy cook of brisket and pulled pork, and vacuum sealed that meat and sold it fresh to people over the following days. And it's been great for people that haven't tried our food before. And as summer has progressed, we found that a lot of people are interested in picking up some of that pre-cooked meat just to take to the cabin with them, or to make it easier to cook at home and weeknights and weekends and so on.
For me, the real value proposition is I don't have time to do all that barbecue, but I definitely want it during the week. I can just take a package, and 20 minutes later, we can have a really nice meal with some rice and some meat on the table. Was that some math that you did, or was it just kind of lucky that, this really works for families?
I don't remember exactly why I got into it, but I've been doing the vacuum sealed meat for at least 3 years. I'm pretty sure it was initially for a way to keep our summer staff fully employed during the winter. So that meat's been available on our website for at least 2 years. This year it's really taken off, and we've done a little bit to promote it.
I think the price point is super fair. My wife and I, we count our dollars, right? We crunch the numbers, and it really is affordable. We can get 4 to 6 servings if you package in some coleslaw and some rice and the meat. Like, it's a really good value.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. That's our goal.
This is not an ad. He's not paid me to say these things. Well, let's talk about Firemasters. Let's talk about the TV show. How did that happen?
So the barbecue community in Canada is a pretty tight-knit group, and word started spreading a little over 2 years ago that a production company in Ontario was filming a live fire grilling show, which is really the first time anything like this has been done in Canada. There's lots of competitive style cooking shows on TV, but nothing's been produced in Canada that involved fire or smoke, anything of the sort. So there was an application process. I hopped on it right away, and there was 3 or 4 phases to that application process. But I'd say between early June, when I first applied, I found out that I was cast for the show around mid-August, and filming happened towards the end of October.
Did you have to send in some tape? Did you have to send them food? What is it?
It was a written application. And several weeks later, there was a much more comprehensive written application where, the goal of that was to try to understand you as a person and as a cook. And after that, there was a Skype interview with 2 or 3 people that lasted about an hour and a half. So,
what was it like behind the scenes? I mean, we can watch the show and we can see you doing your thing.
I was floored by the quality of the production. We didn't get to see the set until the morning at 6:30 when we walked in. We got a quick tour, and I knew right away that this was a first-class operation. The set itself was in an abandoned lumber yard in Hamilton area. Sure hadn't seen human traffic in at least 10 years, but they spruced it up enough for television. The staff on site was warm and welcoming and excited to be there, and we're talking 80 or 90 production staff on set all day, every day. So the scale and the scope of the operation there really impressed me.
Do you have a favorite memory from the competition? Does anything stand out in your mind that you like to share when you're having a beer with buddies?
Yeah, I do have a specific moment of the show, actually. And it's one that comes to mind because everybody talks about it. In the very first round, there's a scene when I go to the main fire pit, and I lower the grate down to the fire because I'm getting ready to sear my steaks. Come back to my station for about 30 seconds, and by the time I turn around and head back to the fire, I find out that one of the other competitors has raised the grates back up again and put food on there. So, to an innocent television viewer, it completely looks like he stole my fire pit. The inside story is that this gentleman, John Thompson out of Ottawa, is one of my best friends, not just in barbecue, but in life. So I ran back to my station laughing in my head, couldn't wait to see how this was portrayed on television. Sure enough, they kind of edited it to the point where he looked like the bad guy. It was not intentional, but not a week goes by where I don't have somebody comment on what a rude thing that was to do to me. It's great.
Was it a shared resource, or did he grab the wrong grill?
It was a fire pit with a grate above it that you can raise and lower, but there was only 2 stations at this fire pit. And in the first round of the show, there's 3 cooks. They ask you to use the fire pit for one of your components, and you're bound to have some conflict, as you may have seen on the show.
A little engineered chaos.
I'd say that was my favorite moment. The whole day was amazing, but that one stands out.
You talk about it a little bit, how they try to engineer some drama. They try to create some tension between the competitors. But what struck me throughout the episode is how calm you were and how unflappable. Is that part of your brand? Is that something that they edited in? How do you carry it?
I've had a number of people comment on that, and I would believe that's part of my brand. I'm a pretty down-to-earth guy. There's very little that gets me excited or upset. And one of my personal philosophies in life is not to get upset about things you can't control, right? Shit happens, you roll with it and move on.
We see Mark with the mullet and the Night Viper glasses and big, bold personality. It's kind of who he is as a personal brand. Are you thinking about that when you're presenting yourself on camera? Your personal brand might be?
That's always a question that ran through my head. I mean, it's my first opportunity to appear on network television, and hopefully not my last. But you're always wondering what the character is that you should portray, right? Or some characters more successful in television. The more I thought about it, the more I kind of threw that all away, and I just went with myself. I'm a pretty subdued personality. I get excited about a lot of things, but it's not obvious by my face. And that's kind of the personality that came through on the final edit of the show too.
Were you happy with how they portrayed how things went down, or was it vastly different from the? I
was quite happy with it, and there's a lot of interviewing that happens on set throughout the day, and there were some pointed questions which I interpreted as kind of trying to pull some smack talk out of us, for lack of a better term, and none of that really hit the final production. It was a kind of a warm show. The cooks were complimentary of each other and supportive of each other, and everybody was out to win, no question about it, but it didn't seem like a cutthroat environment at all.
For me, when I was watching, my favorite moment is when the 2 of the judges are kind of talking about the bread and the presentation, and the other one goes, no, this is like traditional classic.
Chef Rob is making a critical error right now. He's building a sandwich, but he's left the bones on those short ribs.
Now, you guys have apparently never been to an old-school barbecue restaurant where you get a rib sandwich and it's a piece of white bread, 3 bones of ribs, bones and all, and another piece of white bread.
And I was like, yes, because we've discussed that. Mark and I have literally sat down and said, Wonder Bread is how you do.
Absolutely.
Was that something that did you hear that at the time when they were having that conversation? No. Or were you so focused on
I didn't hear that chatter at all. There was even moments of the show when I did quirky things on camera that I don't remember doing, tasting, red Thai chili peppers live, for example. But no, the judges definitely had their banter, and one of those judges, as it turns out, the judge that I cooked against in round 3, he is an old school barbecue guy through and through. He's been a legend in the barbecue world for years. So for him to stand up and say, "Wait a minute, you don't know what you're talking about. Rob's on point here." That was pretty cool. I never knew that happened until I saw it on TV.
How did it make you feel?
Oh, great, absolutely. That second judge, he was critical of the fact that I was building a sandwich without removing the bones from my beef short ribs. However, I wasn't building a sandwich at all. I was just using the bread as a vessel to soak up all the juices from the meat. So
the delicious part.
The delicious part, you bet. And so the judges had their banter. It was interesting to see it. We don't always get that feedback during filming or after filming.
One of the things that I've been doing this summer is I've been shamelessly putting your spices and your rubs on basically everything that hits my grill. Do you iterate a lot on your spices? Like, what was the process to develop those ingredients?
I can talk about that confidently now because I'm working on a 4th spice rub for our line, and what I'm working on this summer is a steak rub. I've always been a huge fan of steak, and that I'm not unique in that area, right? Everybody loves steak, but I always prefer simple flavors on steak, right? You get your Montreal steak spice, for example, and I decided 20 years ago that that sort of seasoning wasn't for me because it really overpowers anything that you apply it to. So in my mind, I had the perfect steak rub, and I've played with it a little over the years, but since we were forced to stay at home for an extended period this year, I got really serious about it. I'm on about my 11th or 12th iteration of this spice rub. I keep liking it more and more, but I keep finding things to be critical of. So another week or so, it'll be to the point where I'm ready to share samples with my friend network in the barbecue and grilling world and solicit feedback from them. We should be able to launch it in September and October. A little late for grilling season, but I'm super excited about that. It's just trial and error, right? Seasoning may taste a certain way when you just taste it out of the bottle, but in order to evaluate it properly, you have to cook with it. And not just once or twice, but cook different meats, with different techniques. You want to make sure that the salt and the sugars are balanced and kind of meet the goals that you have in mind. In case of the steak rub, there's a little brown sugar in it. You wouldn't necessarily expect that, but it enhances the overall profile of the meat that it's applied to. It's a small quantity, but it's there. And the salt has been another tricky one to balance because I brought in 4 different kosher style salts or flake salts, each with a different texture and each with a different appearance, I guess. And I'm evaluating how well that salt stays suspended in the mixture. I'm evaluating how that salt tastes on the final meat, whether it dissolves. Sometimes it doesn't on a quick cook like steak. So there's a lot of things that go into it, and I'm not going to release it until I'm 100% proud of it.
We just do a very simple cracked pepper and salt, but I find it's really inconsistent between each session. Do you have a kind of guideline or a rule to help when you're prepping meat?
Salt's a tricky one because the type of salt you use can dramatically affect the flavor in the finished product. Everybody has a basic table salt at home, but even kosher salt comes in different brands, come in different granularities, for lack of a better term. So the amount that you use is sometimes hard to control. And the other issue is that as soon as you apply salt to a piece of meat, within 10 or 20 seconds, that salt often just disappears. So it's often difficult to gauge how much you've applied there. I like to recommend that people either add salt independently of their other spices or pre-blend them so you can control the amount of salt that gets applied to every piece of meat. And that way you can expect a little more stability from cook to cook.
Deadly. Well, let's get into today's beer.
Absolutely.
This is one I have not had before. It's called Big Juicy Hybrid IPA, and it's from Spectrum Ale Works in Lethbridge.
Is this a younger brewery?
I think they're fairly new, maybe a couple years. I haven't done a ton of research about them. This beer actually comes to me as a gift from a friend who drove out a few weeks ago.
Okay.
He said, "Oh, you got to check these guys out. The beer's pretty good."
I'm looking forward to trying it. I was expecting a sort of a Northeast style beer with the juicy on the can, but I can see it's not hazy in any way.
When I was looking on their website, it suggested that it's a blend of a West Coast and an East Coast IPA style.
Okay. Cheers.
It's got a really juicy aroma.
Yeah, it sure does. That citrus is definitely there, but there's more. It's definitely not a straight Northeast or New England style IPA.
Are you getting, now the fruit escapes me, grapefruit?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the kind of the prominent.
It's more grapefruit than orange, I think, for sure.
And then it's got a little bit of stank on the finish.
It does.
Reminds me of that West Coast
stank.
stank.
It's East meets West. Yeah, it's really good. Great summer beer.
It's a little bit of a bigger beer. Let me just pull it up here. Yeah. Oh, 5.5% ABV. That's not bad. And they said it features Citra, Eldorado, and Mosaic. And I think the Mosaic are kind of like the showcase hop.
Okay.
I think that's what's really giving it that juicy boom. And the citrus is giving it that grapefruit. Citra, I should say.
Cool.
I would drink this again.
It's a good one. I'd drink it again for sure.
What would you pair it with?
What would I pair it with? You know, it's not as sweet as some of these juicier IPAs. So I don't know if it would work well with something spicy. I just think something fairly neutral, some pork chops, maybe some lighter pork sausage, something like that.
Really? Something more laid back? Not maybe a big spicy hit?
Yeah, I don't know. Spicy food, I like to have beers that are either a little on the sweeter side or have that really strong kind of a floral component to it, I guess.
Nice. Would you do another television show if given the opportunity?
Absolutely. And I'm not even so focused on the... I don't know what the term is. Celebrity is not the term here, right? I'm just a cook from Regina. But I'm not so focused on getting my face on television. My biggest takeaway, my biggest thrill with this whole opportunity was the challenge of the thing. You know, it was a long day. They were throwing surprise after surprise at us. It was exhilarating. It was one of the most challenging professional days I've had in my life. And I loved it. So for that reason, I would be thrilled to do something like that again.
I think it was really neat to see an ambassador from Regina where people kind of view us as a flyover province. And it's like, no, man. We have people who know their barbecue.
There's some skills in this city. And after I found out I was cast on the show, I just began researching the Regina food scene a little more. And especially in regards to network television. And it didn't take me long to realize that there aren't any Regina chefs that have ever been on the Food Network before. Which is stunning, honestly. There's a number of chefs from Saskatoon that have been on the show, and deservedly so. But in a city like Regina, there's so many talented cooks and chefs out there. It just really surprised me that none of them had an opportunity like this before. And the greatest thing was as soon as I was able to talk about being on the show, Milton Ravello was also able to talk about the show. And within an hour, I was reaching out to him saying, hey man, congratulations, this is fantastic. And his episode was amazing to watch as well.
You've kind of shattered that glass ceiling.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Regina's a fantastic city, born and raised here, and the food scene is finding its place certainly in the Canadian prairies, if not across Canada.
That's awesome to hear. On that note, I just want to say thank you for your time today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's always a pleasure. I love talking about beer. I love talking about barbecue.
The perfect match.
Rebels, thanks for listening today. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, be sure to join us on our brand new Facebook page, The Rebellion Brewing Podcast. I'm going to include links in the show notes so you can find more about Rob's delicious barbecue. Go to his web store. Don't wait. This is an unpaid endorsement. Just go get his food. Go get his spices. It'll make your life better. It'll make your barbecue better. Sask craft beer scene is always changing, but I'm going to do my best to keep featuring all the new local beers coming out and a few from Alberta and Manitoba. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped so you don't miss out on a single thing. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.